Update on the future of the work at WSBA, Executive Director Nevitt.
All right. So I've been giving you all updates at each meeting, and normally I wouldn't have that much to update, but this time I do. We've had some interest in subletting some of our space, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. And as a reminder, as I said earlier in my executive director report, I'm trying to think about these issues as separate. One issue being, how do we respond to public health guidelines becoming stronger or easing up versus what do we want our new normal to look like? And I see those as being sort of distinct conversations. So this part that I'm going to talk about, or what I've been talking about, is what that new normal is going to look like. And I'm going to share my screen here. So one of the things what we know from doing a couple of surveys with our staff, and we've now done 2 pulse surveys with employees, and consistently we see that roughly 80% of our employees, or at least those that are responding to the survey, are expressing an interest in working primarily remotely. In our most recent pulse survey, we gave folks a sense of what different support from the organization would look like if they chose to be based at home versus if they chose to be based in the office. And that made the percentage of those wanting to work remotely drop a bit to about 75%. But it's still a strong contingent of employees that are expressing an interest in working remotely. As I've said before, I see this as potentially a win-win-win. Having more employees working remotely might allow us to shrink our footprint in the office. And at the same time, it will force us to continue to invest in ways for people to participate remotely, which benefits not only our employees, but also benefits our volunteers and members in that even though we may only be located in one spot, everyone can participate in a similar way. Now, one of the challenges is that reconfiguring the office, coming up with new approaches to support work, all of this potentially has some cost. And because we have a lease through 2026, the savings are sort of down the road. And so the board had authorized us to put our space on the market for potential subletting as a way to recoup some of those costs sooner rather than later and essentially be able to fund some of the shift that we'd like to make. So we have now been approached by one entity with some interest in leasing our space. They're interested in about 5,000 square feet of space on the southern part of the 11th floor. One thing I want, as you look at the details of this, one thing that I really want to emphasize is this is by no means a done deal. As I understand it, they are still shopping around. We are one of several properties that they are looking at, but I do think that it gives us a sense of what might be out there for us. And I believe that there's a different entity that's going to take a walkthrough at our space tomorrow. So we do seem to be getting a bit of interest in our space. As you can see on the slide, the rent being offered is about $35 per square foot, which I will look to CFO Perez in a moment to confirm that. I think that's either exactly what we're paying per square foot. Okay, Treasurer Clark is confirming that that is what we pay per square foot.
That's correct.
Okay. There will be broker fees, which will be some cost. Also, we would need to build a separation wall, which we are estimating would cost about $5,000. And we would also incur expenses in relocating the workspaces that are in that part of the building. And we're estimating about $19,000 for that cost. Go ahead, Governor Williams-Ruth.
Can you explain what that relocation cost is? I'm not familiar what $20,000 of moving would be.
I can let CFO Perez speak to how we came up with that estimate.
Sure. That number is based on a cost per square foot for moving offices around. When you relocate from one location to another location, the cost per square foot is approximately $5. We estimated this on a basis of $3 because we're not moving from one location to another, but rather relocating amongst floors. So this is basically the labor cost of the tear downs of the what do you call them? The offices or the cubes, and then the buildup of the cubes once again in the new areas and all that type of stuff. So that's how it's estimated.
Director Nevitt, would you mind going back a couple slides to the, yeah, so I'm not familiar with the 11th floor. Can you describe what that space is that's going to be torn down?
Sure. So, and one thing I want to note, this is all very preliminary. These are estimates. We just got the offer, I think, at the end of last week. And so we sort of scrambled to be able to pull together something for you. And I believe that our broker also provided some guidance on what some of these costs might be. So essentially, this is offices and also cubicles. And so, and then all the equipment that accompanies them. There's also a kitchen, a workroom with some large office equipment. And so we would need to, I believe we would probably leave the offices up, but I believe we would be removing the cubicles and removing all the equipment, including all the equipment within each of the workspaces.
What's in the big giant open space?
That's the workroom. Oh, the open space, there's probably, that I think is where all the cubicles are. I think what you see up are the offices. Okay. So again, very preliminary. It's just really to give you a sense of what this might look like. We would estimate that this could generate about $262,500 in gross income, and at the end of the day would net about $221,875 to the positive. It's CFO Perez's recommendation that all of this money would flow in and out of the restricted facilities fund. So the revenue would come into there. That's where we would fund our relocation expenses. And then the net gain would remain in the restricted facilities fund. So next steps, if we do indeed get a firm offer, our broker, Jones Lang LaSalle, would communicate with our property manager and building owner, Unico, and the University of Washington. We would need to firm up our estimates, prepare the lease agreement, sign the lease agreement, complete the relocation, and their interest is in being in by August 1. So we would need to move out by July 31st. Obviously, that's a pretty quick timeline, and it is something that we have been preparing for. You might recall when we first presented our remote workforce transition timeline, we had a plan A, which is on your screen now, and we also had a plan B. So plan A was assuming that, you know, if we have sufficient time and we don't have an offer on the table that we want to take advantage of, we would sort of line everything up to the budget process. So not that necessarily there is anticipated to be a huge budget item, but just we thought that that was a good cycle to align ourselves to. So we are currently in the assessment phase. In fact, we're just wrapping up the assessment phase, and we have some recommendations from our remote operations team that the executive leadership team is going to be looking at next week. And our intent would have been in June to include any budget request items with the budget, as well as any necessary policy changes, and that we would sort of go into our new normal at the beginning of next fiscal year, October 1. Now, if we do decide that we have a sublet offer that we want to take advantage of, whether it's this one or another one that should come in, then we would move to Plan B, which means that we would immediately move to doing the position assessments. And so that's where we will assess each position in the organization to first determine whether it is a position that can be done remotely. Once we've made that determination, then we will ask employees to decide whether they would prefer to be based in the office or whether they would prefer to be based out of the office. We are talking about flexibility, how often people will be able to make changes to that decision. We're certainly not relying on the idea that 75 or 80% of our employees will opt to be positioned remotely. We expect that as we finalize things, that number will probably drop. And even so, giving up this portion of our 11th floor would be doable even with a small amount of our staff opting to work remotely. Assuming there are any budget items, we would bring an out of cycle request to the board in June, and so that we could execute the changes in July. You're giving me a look. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I can't see hands. All right, are you going to cue these up, President
I
Shkreli?
am, yes. I've got two that I see. Governor Pertzer, followed by Governor Stevens.
Yes, thank you. Tara, did I hear you say that you have another offer that you thought was going to be coming in?
Not that we have another offer. I just know that someone else is coming to take a walkthrough tomorrow.
Okay, and do you know how much square footage they're looking at?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you know, CFO Perez?
No, I do not. They did not inform me. They only informed me that they want to have a walkthrough tomorrow at 12:25.
Okay, and then if this is the 5,000 square feet is sublet, does that leave additional square footage for purposes of being sublet, and how much?
Well, it really depends. We have 4 floors or 3 and a portion of a floor. So we have the 6th floor, which we are not making available to sublet. We also have the 7th floor, the 8th floor, and the 11th floor. So all 7th, 8th, and 11th are all being advertised. It's really, again, it does at some point become a question of, if someone wanted to sublet a great deal of the space, then we really do have to go through that position assessment and figure out how many employees are going to be working remotely, because we need to make sure we still have enough space for those who want to be in the office.
Right.
But certainly I think there would still be some additional space available to sublet.
Okay, great, thank you.
Governor Stevens.
So, Tara, if we go down this path, I guess one of the questions I have is, will we be planning to have an area that is, I'm going to call it floater space? Meaning, yes, I know there are people who say I prefer to work at home, but as as everything is beginning to open up, there'll be times, I think, when people may have a need, from time to time to come in to work or support a committee or a commission. So as we begin to do this, it seems to me the idea of, so what's the space availability for people who will need to come in and need a place to lay down while they're, to rest while they're in the office.
Right. Yes. And when we've done the surveys, certainly one thing that's come through loud and clear is that employees would like the flexibility. And I think many employees anticipate, even if they're based remotely, that they would intend to come into the office occasionally, maybe even 1 or 2 days a week, and that those who wish to be based in the office would also like to take advantage of the ability to work from home from time to time. I think that our intent would be that for those at this point, and we haven't finalized all of our recommendations, but where we appear to be headed is that for those employees who choose to be based in the office, they would have a designated workspace, whether that's an office or a workspace, and more of an open workspace. And so first we would need to calculate those and have those ready. And then every other space would be available on a drop-in basis for folks who are based at home but want to come into the office.
And after we're done with this, I have a general question regarding opening up and the 6th floor. I just want to understand how we're doing that.
Do you want to ask that now, or do you want to?
Sure. Oh, okay. I'll ask it now, which is basically, as we're looking at opening up, and I mean not just WSBA, I mean everything. My question is right now, I don't know what's happening in terms of just traffic into our office to the 6th floor. And so I'm kind of asking questions about reception, what's going on with that. When I look on the website, it says, we're open until 5 o'clock. And I'm kind of saying, well, yeah, but are we really open? So
yeah,
help me out with that.
No, we're not. We're definitely not really open, and we should probably correct that if that's what it says on the website. We are closed to the public. We're closed to our employees right now. Nobody can come into the office without express permission. As I said in my executive director's report, right now we have been planning to target October 1 as sort of a complete reopen, although we are preparing ourselves to speed that up depending on what the state guidance looks like. We are looking to make some changes to the sixth floor, both in light of the pandemic conditions, some ongoing safety concerns, and also some acute safety concerns. As some of you know, we had a very serious safety incident this year. And currently, the way that the sixth floor has operated is that it's completely open to the public during business hours. Anyone can come up and anyone can enter the space. And we are looking to change that. We are looking to control entry to the sixth floor. And we're currently working through how that's going to work, particularly how we can make sure that we still have an open and inviting environment for folks who are coming to events or for folks who are coming to do bar business. But we are looking to change up a little bit what the sixth floor looks like in terms of how people access it.
Okay, and Tara, just one other. So where are we? And I'm also looking at what may need to come to personnel, but vaccine requirements, I mean, where are we with just beginning to have that conversation in terms of the employee base and what happens?
Yes, so we have been discussing that extensively as an executive leadership team. We also have sought the advice of outside counsel. And at this point, we are not intending to require the vaccination of our employees. We did in the pulse survey inquire. It was an anonymous survey as to how many folks have been vaccinated or intend to get vaccinated, and it was a very high percentage. So I think at this point, we're looking to education and encouragement as our primary mechanism. And then certainly we will be maintaining all the health and safety guidelines, including masking in the office for as long as it's prudent.
Governor Williams-Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the last issue has derailed my thoughts. We were talking subleasing and son of a gun. I don't know. Since I'm thinking about the vaccine, I hope that WSBA will take a position of, if people don't want to wear masks, that they're fully vaccinated, that they can prove it, and that they can, again, abide by the rules and regulations that are coming on. So that way, for those who have gotten it, because that is something that I firmly believe in allowing people to do. Can we, I had a whole thought that I wanted to ask about, and yeah, I can't remember.
All right, any Governor Stevens, your hand's still up. Do you have another comment? Nope. All right. Any other governors? No.
Oh.
Governor Williams-Ruth.
It's back. Thank you. So it's about the, so it sounds like what you're saying is that you're potentially going to allow for some employees to have a hybrid of both work from home and not. For the people I know, including my own husband, who worked for companies that allowed for that hoteling method, there's a specific program that's used so that way it's not a person. Has WSBA looked into that program that's going to then be necessary to make sure that you don't all of a sudden have someone come in because it's the most popular person's birthday and they're all going to come in for lunch and there's literally no desks? Has that happened yet?
I don't think we've gotten into that level of detail yet, but if Anna is here, I will look to her and see if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would say we haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. At this point, we're just trying to determine how many bodies are coming back or are interested in coming back and how much space we have. But I think I would actually really like if you could pass along that program. If there's something that actually is set up in that way, I'd love to explore it.
I will see if I can find out. My husband's no longer with the company that does that, but I also know Perkins Coie has gone to a similar hoteling method. So if we have any contacts there, I just knowing that sometimes a computer program, when it comes for a business, is not an insignificant cost. And I just want to make sure that that won't be the surprise when we go to launch something and it's like, oops, hey, here's a brand new line item that wasn't included in any of the thought process.
All right. Executive Director Nevitt, anything further from you?
I think that's all I've got. Thank you so much for the good questions and the helpful comments.
Great.